Hello and welcome to BioRules video lessons. Last class we talked about cells and the functions of life. And we discussed that unicellular organisms, they have to perform all the functions of life. They need to get energy and nutrients by feeding or other process. They need to control the bodily functions, the cells function, to control the state of things, homeostasis. They need sometimes to move. They need to reproduce, to excrete. So they need to do everything. And for a unicellular organism, performing these basic functions of life is a full-time job. Basically, they have to do everything. Today, we are going to see how cells working together can go beyond the basic functions of life. So, for that, we'll first talk about emergent properties. Emergent properties is a concept that's not biological, it's a concept in economy and other areas of knowledge that says the following. In teamwork, 1 plus 1 is bigger than 2. This is a very good example of an emergent property. What do I mean by that? If you're building a house, let's say you spend 1 hour building a wall, and another person spends 1 hour building a wall. So each one of you spends 1 hour to build a wall. So we would imagine that if you two work together, you'd be able to build 2 walls in 1 hour. So that's the obvious. So if each one of you builds 1 hour in 1 hour, 1 wall in 1 hour, so that's it. You together 2 walls in 1 hour. However, that's not how it works. Because when you're building a wall, you may specialize. No, you may bring the bricks, and at the same time, your partner can be preparing the cement. You may align the bricks while your partner puts on the cement, and then you put on the brick, and then they put more cement. So if you share activities, you end up being faster. So you will build these 2 walls in less than 1 hour, or in 1 hour you're going to be building 2 and a little bit more of walls. So that's the idea of emergent properties. So the same will happen here. If you have different cells for different functions in life, we may be able to do everything that's needed for being alive, the basic functions of life, and maybe they can do even more. So more properties may emerge from this teamwork and working together. If you want to know more about emergence and emergent properties, I strongly advise you watch this video. It gives a very good picture in 7 minutes and a half. You won't regret it. Trust me. Take a look on this. Okay? Very good. Now that you watched that video, let's talk about differentiation. So in cells, sometimes, in one organism that's multicellular, all the cells you have the same genome. That means all the cells you have the same genetic code. They have all the information to build the entire living organism. You, for example, you are made of trillions of cells. Each single one of them have the information to make any part of your body. So as any cell of your body, you have the information to make a brain cell, a liver cell, a blood cell, whatever cell that you need. So that means that they have the same genome. But different cells build different proteins. How do they do that? If they build different proteins to perform different functions, but they have the same genome, so something is weird here. What will happen? They are going to be building different proteins that will build different structure because they will express the genes in different ways. So you have the same genes in every cell, but not every cell expresses all the genes. You have cells that you express some genes to produce certain proteins, other cells you express other genes to produce other proteins. So your cells are going to be activating some genes and deactivating other genes. So you will learn more about this in the future. The genes, they are pieces of information that are contained in the DNA. So basically what your cell has to do is turn some of those genes on, turn some of those genes off, and you make a kind of cell. And if you do the same, turning some genes on and some genes off, different genes, you're going to make a different kind of cell in another part of your body. So basically, we grow different cells with the same information because they read differently our genome. Very good. As a result of this, we end up with the same DNA producing cells for different forms and different functions. So basically, we deactivate cells that will, genes, that will make cells for different functions. For example, you can make a very long and capable of contracting muscle cell. You can make different kind of blood cells, cells that are capable of transporting gases like oxygen, cells that are going to do different jobs in fighting disease in an immune system. You have cells like neurons that sends electrochemical information. You have the intestinal cells to absorb your food, pancreatic islet cells to produce hormones, liver cells to metabolize everything that you eat and other stuff like that. So from the same kind of cell, one cell that made, by division, made all the clean cells you have, you're going to have different types of cells. And this is called differentiation. Different cells coming from the same origin. This brings us to the concept of stem cell. Stem cells are cells that are capable of differentiating, cells that are capable of becoming different. The ultimate stem cell is the zygote, the cell that has been formed when you were fecundated, when you had an egg from your mother, a sperm cell from your father, they were put together, they made a zygote, and that one first cell started dividing, making an embryo, a very early embryo. Those cells in the early embryo, they were undifferentiated, but soon they start differentiating themselves, becoming all the about 500 different types of cells. That depends on what you call different, of course, but there are different definitions of what is different, but you have many types of cells. So basically you have cells that go and become skin cells over here. You have some that become nerve cells or pigment cells or adrenal gland cells, but you also have in another branch here cells that become blood cells, muscle cells. What else you have here? You have this aside here, the pancreas cells, lungs, thyroid gland, and so on. So basically a stem cell is a cell that's capable of differentiating, become all those different types of cells. And ultimately, a cell, the further it is, so the more basic it is into this stem here, it's called stem cell because it looks like a tree. So the more basic it is, more cells it can become. For example, if you have cells that are kept undifferentiated over here, that means that they can become any kind of blood cells. They may become a white blood cell, like the macrophages, the leukocytes, the neutrophils, and so on. Or they can become a red blood cell that transports oxygen. So a stem cell over here is capable of differentiating into any kind of blood cell. But if you have a stem cell that's over here, then this cell here would be capable of becoming kidney and smooth muscle, adrenal gland cortex, striated muscle, blood, and so on. But they cannot become nerve cell because the nerve cell is already in another branch over here, so it's already different. So this cell cannot undifferentiate to go in that way. This is the definition of stem cells. So why people talk so much about stem cells nowadays? Because we figure out that if you get a stem cell, a cell that is not fully differentiated, and you place that into a tissue, that cell can replace cells where they grow. For example, if you inject in a heart that was damaged, a heart that suffered heart attack, the muscle cells are dead. If you inject in that dead tissue stem cells, the cells are going to look around and are going to say, oh, look, I'm in a heart, so I might be a heart. And if they are capable of differentiating into heart, they are going to be growing back as heart muscle cells. And you have a heart that has been repaired. This is technology that is being used already for 10 years to fix hearts that suffered from massive heart attacks and severe heart damage. Another example is Stargardt disease. In Stargardt disease, the back of the eye, called macula, where the retina is, degenerates. So basically, slowly you run blind. If you're running blind because you don't have those cells that are capable of seeing light, what can we do? We can inject stem cells over there. They will look around and say, oh, look, I'm in a macula, I'm in a retina, so I might be a retina cells. And if they're capable of becoming those kind of cells, they regenerate and you start seeing back again. So this is stem cell therapy, no, where you can repair tissues by injecting stem cells. However, there are some issues underlying this technology. One of them is ethical. The best stem cells to be used for therapeutic use of stem cells, no stem cells therapy, is embryonic stem cells. But for you to make research with embryonic stem cells, you need to gather cells from an embryo that's already very small with very few cells. So usually that leads to the destruction of the embryo in order for you to do the research. And people that's against the destruction of embryos would say, oh, this is bad, so no, it's alive and all that stuff, so it is controversial. It is possible to get stem cells from umbilical cord, but although the umbilical cord is yours just before you are born, most stem cells that are there, they are already adult stem cells. You have stem cells there, but you also have those, almost all of those in your body, so they're not very useful for doing any kind of stem cell therapy that we can think. The same goes for adult stem cells. We don't have many stem cells for many tissues. So, for example, if you break a spinal cord, you don't have stem cells capable of making nerve cells for a spinal cord. So, in that case, if you want to use adult stem cells, you won't have cells for that. So, there are ways of trying to play. No, we discuss more of that in class. But there is this debate. No, the earlier in an organism you get the stem cells, probably more that cell is capable of differentiating, becoming any kind of cells that we need. Okay. In addition, there are some dangers involved in stem cell research to be able to do stem cell therapy. One of them is that stem cells are cells, we want them fresh and eager to reproduce, and if you inject a cell that's eager to reproduce, you have to be very careful that that cell doesn't become the problem itself, by reproducing out of control, what we call cancer. Another thing that has to be very well studied before you inject a cell in someone's tissue is that it differentiates into the right tissue. You don't want to inject stem cells in your heart, and instead of becoming muscle, the cell become bones, because having bones in your heart is not going to be good for your heart function. So you may end up with a worse problem than you start with. So to avoid that, lots of research has to be made on stem cells to make sure that they are not going to be growing out of control, cancer, and they are not going to be growing into a different tissue. You need to tame the cells so they grow into exactly what we want. Okay? So, stem cells, definition, cells with the capacity of differentiating, of becoming a different kind of cell. So a cell that can become nerve cells, muscle cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, and so on. So this is a stem cell. Okay, we have them in our body for some tissues. We have many of those when you are an embryo, because basically that's what a zygote does. One cell becomes all the cells that you have in our body. But we can also use that to replace cells all over our body in stem cells therapy. This video is very good. It's also a 7.5 minutes video. I strongly advise you take a look, because it's very short, very sweet, and you have a good grasp of what these stem cells and the stem cell therapy, what's that all about. If you want to know a little bit more, there's this other video by Craig John. It's a short one, 4 minutes, that you can also take a look to learn more about stem cells. I might give you an article from National Geographic about stem cells. It's a very interesting reading, so that would be an additional reading for you to know even more about the controversy. This article here tells things about stem cells, how they work, what they're useful for, but also tries to talk a little bit about the controversy behind stem cells research. Okay, I hope you had fun. Remember to watch those videos. Take my word for it, you won't regret. See you in the next class. Bye bye.